Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Hughes Valiant, watching the stars through the large window. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for over 200 years. Jake had served in the human fleet for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what was happening now. The communication officer turned to him. "Sir, we're getting reports from the border systems. The Keth Empire is moving again." Jake nodded. He had been expecting this news. The Keth Empire had been growing more aggressive for months. They were a warrior race that believed in strength. Above all else, their ships were powerful, and their soldiers were fierce. Most importantly, they had numbers. Lots of numbers. "Send word to Admiral Martinez," Jake said. "Tell her the Keth fleet is 3 times larger than our scouts reported." On the other side of the galaxy, Ambassador Lisa Carter was walking through the halls of the Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime. She had been Earth's representative for 5 years, and she had never seen the other species so worried. The building was full of aliens from dozens of different worlds, all talking in hushed voices. Lisa entered the main council chamber. The room was huge, with seats for representatives from every member species. At the center stood War General Fax of the Keth Empire. He was tall and covered in dark scales, with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. His voice boomed across the room. "The time for weakness is over," Fax declared. "The galaxy needs strong leadership. The Keth Empire will provide that leadership." High Technician Vextar of the Zephyrian Collective stood up. The Zephyrians were known for their advanced technology. They had the best computers and the fastest ships in the galaxy. "The Keth Empire has violated 3 peace treaties in the past month," Vextar said. "They have invaded neutral systems without warning." Trade Master Quillen of the Alteran Republic nodded in agreement. The Alterans were merchants who controlled most of the galaxy's trade routes. "Economic sanctions are the answer," Quillen said. "We must cut off all trade with the Keth Empire." Lisa stood up when it was her turn to speak. "Earth believes we should try diplomatic solutions first," she said. "War should be the last option, not the first." The other representatives looked at her with what seemed like pity. They thought humans were soft. In the past 2 centuries, humanity had only fought defensive wars. They had never invaded another species' territory. They had never conquered other worlds. Most aliens thought this meant humans were weak. War General Fax laughed. "The humans speak of peace while we prepare for war. This is why the Keth Empire will rule the galaxy. We are not afraid to use our strength." Far from the political discussions, Dr. Helen Wade was working in a secret laboratory on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. She was the head of Project Omega, humanity's most classified research program. The laboratory was deep underground, protected by layers of security that few people even knew existed. Helen looked at the data on her screen. The numbers were frightening. Project Omega had been in development for 50 years, ever since humans first joined the Galactic Federation. The project was based on a simple idea. If humanity ever needed to defend itself, it would need weapons that could end any threat quickly and completely. "How are the tests going?" asked General Chris Taylor. As he entered the lab, he was the head of Human Military Command and one of only 12 people who knew about Project Omega. "The dark matter manipulation tests are complete," Helen replied. "The quantum cascade weapons are ready for deployment. But Chris, if we ever use these weapons, there's no going back. The damage won't just be to our enemies. It will be to space itself." Chris nodded grimly. He had read the reports. The weapons they had developed could literally tear holes in reality. They could age enemy ships thousands of years in seconds. They could create black holes that would swallow entire fleets. They were weapons that should never exist, but humanity had built them anyway. "Let's hope we never have to use them," Chris said back on the Hughes Valiant. Jake received an urgent message from Captain Ryan Brooks on Earth. Ryan was speaking for the human government at the Galactic Council. The Keth Empire has issued an ultimatum. Ryan's message said, "All species must submit to their rule within 1 standard month, or they will begin military action." "Jake, they're serious. Our intelligence reports show they've been building the largest fleet in galactic history." Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the Keth Empire was preparing for war. Their fleet had over 50,000 ships. They had been planning this for years, maybe decades. They believed their superior numbers and advanced. Plasma weapons would make them unstoppable. The humans had tried to warn the galaxy about this day. For 2 centuries, they had spoken of peace and cooperation. They had built defensive fleets, not offensive ones. They had never shown their true military capabilities because they hoped they would never need to. But Jake knew something that the rest of the galaxy didn't. Humanity had not been weak during those 2 centuries. They had been careful. They had been preparing. And most importantly, they had been hoping that this day would never come. The communication officer spoke again. "Sir, we are receiving new orders from command. All human ships are to fall back to defensive positions. We're implementing Protocol 7. Jake's blood ran cold. Protocol 7 was a defensive posture that humanity hadn't used in over a century. It meant that humanity was preparing for the possibility of total war. "Understood," Jake said. "Begin the retreat." As the Hughes Valiant turned away from the border, Jake wondered if the galaxy truly understood what it was about to witness. The Keth Empire thought they were facing a weak and peaceful species. They thought humans would surrender without a fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The attack came without warning. Paul Johnson was sitting in his office on New Portland, a human colony world near the edge of human space, when the alarms began screaming. He looked out his window and saw the sky burning with the light of plasma. "Weapons. This is Colony Administrator Johnson," he said into his communication device. "We are under attack. Repeat, New Portland is under attack." The Keth Empire had launched their war simultaneously across the galaxy. Hundreds of their ships appeared in star systems belonging to humans, Zephyrians, and Alterans. They attacked. Without declaring war, without giving any warning, without showing any mercy. Paul watched in horror as Keth fighters strafed the colony's main city. Buildings exploded in flames. People ran screaming through the streets. The colony's small defense force was completely overwhelmed. "Earth Command, this is New Portland," Paul broadcast desperately. "We have civilian casualties in the millions. The Keth fleet is destroying everything. We need immediate assistance." But before he could finish his message, a plasma beam struck the communication center. The connection went dead. Paul Johnson's final transmission was lost in static. "Admiral." Susan Martinez received the news of the attacks while she was aboard the UES Titan, humanity's flagship. She had been expecting this day for years, but it still felt like a punch to the stomach. The reports coming in from across human space were all the same. Surprise attacks, overwhelming enemy numbers, desperate pleas for help. "Admiral, her communications." Officer said, "We're receiving authorization from President Kevin Adams. We are cleared for Protocol 7. Susan took a deep breath. Protocol 7 was something she had hoped never to see. It was a defensive strategy that humanity had not used since the early days of space exploration. It meant pulling back all human forces and allowing the enemy to advance while humanity prepared its true response. "Send the order to all ships," Susan said. "All human vessels are to retreat to secondary positions. Do not engage the enemy unless directly threatened." Across the galaxy, human ships began pulling back. To the other species, it looked like humanity was running away. The Keth Empire celebrated their easy victories. War General Fax broadcast across the galaxy that humanity was proving to be even weaker than expected, but not everyone was convinced. Admiral Kexmore of the Zephyrian fleet had fought alongside humans before. He knew they were not cowards. As he watched human ships retreat from every battle, he wondered what they were really planning. "Something is wrong," Kexmore told his officers. "Humans do not run from fights. They are planning something." But Kexmore didn't have time to figure out what humans were planning. The Keth Empire was attacking his own people. The Zephyrian homeworld's orbital defenses were under assault. His fleet was outnumbered 10 to 1. "All ships engage the enemy," Kexmore ordered. "We will show them that the Zephyrian collective does not surrender." The battle above the Zephyrian homeworld was fierce. Zephyrian ships used advanced energy, shields and quantum torpedoes. They had the most sophisticated technology in the galaxy. But technology meant nothing against overwhelming numbers. One by one, Zephyrian ships were destroyed. Kexmore watched his fleet being torn apart. He sent desperate messages to the other species, asking for help. But the Alterans were recalling their own ships to defend their trade routes. The smaller species were already surrendering to the Keth Empire. Only the humans were still fighting, and they seemed to be losing every battle they entered. On Earth, the Global Defense Council was meeting in emergency session. President Adams sat at the head of the table, looking older than his 60 years. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space, including General Taylor and Dr. Wade. "The casualty reports are coming in," General Taylor said. "We've lost contact with 15 colony worlds. The Keth Empire is moving faster than we expected." Senator Michelle Brown slammed her hand on the table. "We need to negotiate with them. There has to be a peaceful solution." "The time for negotiation is over," Dr. Wade said quietly. "They're not interested in peace. They want total surrender." President Adams looked around the table. "Helen, is Project Omega ready?" Dr. Wade nodded. "The weapons are ready for deployment. But, sir, once we use them, there's no going back. The effects will be permanent. Some regions of space will be uninhabitable for thousands of years." "And if we don't use them?" the president asked. "Then humanity will be enslaved or destroyed," General Taylor said, "along with every other free species in the galaxy." The debate continued for hours. Some argued for continued resistance using conventional weapons. Others pushed for diplomatic solutions. But as the reports came in, it became clear that neither option would work. The Keth Empire was too strong, and they were not interested in mercy. Captain Emma Rodriguez of the UES Defender was witnessing the destruction of the Zephyrian homeworld's defenses when she received new orders. Like all human ship captains, she was being recalled to Earth for the final phase of humanity's plan. "But sir," she said to Admiral Martinez over the communication link, "the Zephyrians are fighting alone. They're being massacred." "I know," Martinez replied, "but we have our orders. Return to Earth immediately." Emma watched as another Zephyrian ship exploded in the distance. She had friends on some of those ships, good people who were dying while humanity appeared to run away. "Admiral," Emma said, "whatever we're planning, it better be worth it." "It will be," Martinez said. "Trust me, Emma. What's coming next will end this war." As human ships across the galaxy began their retreat to Earth, War General Fax celebrated what he thought was his greatest victory. The humans were running. The Zephyrians were nearly defeated. The Alterans were hiding behind their trade barriers. The galaxy was almost his. "Send a message to all human worlds," Fax ordered. "Tell them they have 1 day to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we will destroy Earth itself." The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species heard it. The humans were being given one final chance to surrender before the Keth Empire destroyed their homeworld. On Earth, President Adams received the ultimatum while he was still in the council chamber. He read it aloud to the assembled leaders. 1 day, he said. They're giving us 1 day to surrender. General Taylor stood up. Sir, we need to make a decision. Do we surrender, or do we show them what humanity is really capable of? President Adams looked around the room one final time. He saw fear in some faces, determination in others. But in all of them, he saw the same thing, the knowledge that this moment would define humanity's future. General Taylor, the president said, prepare for total response protocol. Dr. Wade, activate Project Omega. Admiral Martinez, you have authorization to use all available weapons. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what those words meant. Humanity was about to reveal its true power. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had spent 2 centuries trying to avoid this moment. The war was about to begin in earnest. The Keth Empire's fleet was the largest military force in galactic history. Over 50,000 warships moved through space toward Earth, their dark hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. War General Thax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. How long until we reach the human homeworld? He asked his navigation officer. 6 hours, General, came the reply. The human fleet appears to be waiting for us there. Thax laughed. Good. Let them wait. Let them see their doom approaching. I want every species in the galaxy to watch as we destroy Earth. It will be a lesson they never forget. The Keth Empire was broadcasting their approach across the galaxy. They wanted everyone to see humanity's final defeat. They wanted the galaxy to know that resistance was useless. On Earth, President Adams was holding what might be humanity's last cabinet meeting. The room was filled with tension. Through the windows, they could see human ships taking defensive positions around their homeworld. But everyone knew that 5,000 human ships could not defeat 50,000 Keth vessels using conventional weapons. Sir, General Taylor said, the Keth fleet will be here in 6 hours. All our ships are in position. Project Omega is ready for deployment. Dr. Wade looked up from her computer. Mr. President, I need to explain one more time what will happen. If we use these weapons, the quantum cascade technology will literally tear holes in space-time. The dark matter manipulation will create gravitational anomalies that will last for centuries. Some areas of space will become uninhabitable. Senator Brown shook her head. There has to be another way. We can't destroy parts of the galaxy just to win a war. If we don't use these weapons, General Taylor said, there won't be a galaxy left to worry about. The Keth Empire will enslave every species, destroy every world that resists, and turn the galaxy into their personal empire. President Adams stood up and walked to the window. He could see the human fleet in the distance, small lights against the darkness of space. In a few hours, the largest battle in galactic history would begin. I spent my entire political career trying to prevent this moment, he said. I believe that diplomacy and peace were always possible. But sometimes evil forces you to fight. He turned back to the group. Dr. Wade, transmit the authorization codes to Admiral Martinez. General Taylor, activate Total Response Protocol. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's survival. Admiral Martinez received the codes aboard the UES Titan. She had been preparing for this moment for years, but it still felt surreal. She was about to unleash weapons that could reshape the galaxy itself. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez, she broadcast to the human fleet. We are now authorized for Total Response Protocol. Repeat, we are authorized for Total Response Protocol. Prepare quantum cascade weapons for deployment. Across the human fleet, ship captains received the message with a mixture of relief and fear. Relief that they could finally fight back. Fear of what they were about to unleash. Captain Nick Foster of the UES Nemesis was one of the first to receive the new orders. He had been serving in the human fleet for 20 years, but he had never seen weapons like the ones being activated on his ship. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "the quantum cascade system is online. We're ready to engage." Nick nodded. "Target the lead elements of the Keth fleet. Prepare to fire on my command." The Keth fleet was now close enough to see Earth with their visual sensors. War General Fax was enjoying the moment. He had spent years planning this attack, and now he was about to achieve his greatest victory. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Destroy the human fleet, then target their cities. I want Earth to burn." The first wave of Keth ships opened fire with plasma cannons. Beams of superheated energy crossed space toward the human fleet. But before they could reach their targets, something impossible happened. The human ships stopped retreating. Instead, they began moving forward, directly toward the Keth fleet. And they were activating weapons that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. "What are those energy readings?" Dax's science officer asked, staring at his instruments in confusion. "Unknown, sir," came the reply. "The humans are generating power levels that should be impossible." Admiral Martinez watched the tactical display as the human fleet moved into attack formation. "All ships, this is your admiral. Today, we end this war. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will not be enslaved. Open fire." The first quantum cascade weapon fired from the UES Nemesis. The beam looked like ordinary energy at first, but when it struck the Keth fleet, the results were beyond anything anyone had imagined. 3,000 Keth ships simply vanished. They didn't explode. They didn't break apart. They ceased to exist, as if they had never been there at all. The quantum cascade had unraveled the very atoms they were made of. "Impossible," Thax whispered, staring at the empty space where his ships had been. The Zephyrian survivors, watching from their hidden monitoring stations, detected energy readings that defied the laws of physics. High Technician Vexstar, who had escaped the destruction of his homeworld, couldn't believe what his instruments were telling him. The humans are manipulating the fundamental forces of reality itself, he transmitted to the other surviving Zephyrians. These weapons shouldn't exist. The Alterans, monitoring from their trade ships hidden in nearby systems, were recording space-time distortions that their most advanced sensors could barely detect. Trademaster Quillen sent an urgent message to all Alteran vessels. "Stay away from the battle zone. The humans are using weapons that can tear holes in space itself." But the demonstration was just beginning. Captain Lavra Hayes of the UES Retribution activated her ship's dark matter manipulation system. The weapon reached out across space and grabbed a formation of Keth ships. Then it began to compress them. The enemy vessels were crushed by artificial gravity fields millions of times stronger than anything that should exist. They were compressed into tiny points of matter that then collapsed into miniature black holes. Entire battle groups disappeared into gravitational singularities that would exist for millions of years. Commander Alex Thompson's ship, the UE's Vengeance, used temporal displacement weapons. When his ship fired, enemy vessels began aging thousands of years in seconds. Their hulls corroded, their engines failed, their crews died of old age in moments. Ships that had been built to last centuries crumbled into dust in minutes. War General Fax watched in horror as his mighty fleet was being destroyed by weapons that seemed to violate everything he knew about reality. His plasma cannons were useless. His shields provided no protection. His ships were being erased from existence. Retreat. He screamed into his communication system. "All ships, retreat immediately." But it was too late. The human fleet was advancing, and their weapons were reaching across impossible distances. Ships trying to flee were caught by quantum fields that aged them to death. Others were pulled into artificial black holes that appeared from nowhere. Admiral Martinez watched the battle from the bridge of the U.E.'s Titan. She felt no joy in the destruction, only a grim satisfaction that humanity's enemies were finally learning the truth. "Sir," her tactical officer reported, "the Keth fleet is in complete disarray. They're trying to retreat, but our weapons are faster than their engines." Martinez nodded. "Continue the attack. Make sure the galaxy sees what happens when you threaten humanity's survival." The battle was less than an hour old, but the outcome was already decided. The most powerful military force in galactic history was being destroyed by weapons that seemed to come from nightmares rather than science. What happened next was not really a battle. It was a demonstration of power so complete and terrifying that it would be remembered for thousands of years. The human fleet, outnumbered 10-1, began systematically destroying the Keth empires. Armada using weapons that defied every law of physics. The galaxy thought it knew. War General Thax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet die around him. In 30 minutes, he had lost over 20,000 ships. The humans were using only 5,000 vessels, but they were winning so decisively that it seemed impossible. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his science officer. "I don't." "No, sir," the officer replied, his voice shaking. "Our instruments can barely detect their weapons. They're manipulating forces that our science says don't exist." Captain Lara Hayes was aboard the UES Retribution, watching her dark matter manipulation system work with terrifying efficiency. Her weapons officer targeted a formation of 3,000 Keth ships that were trying to flank the human fleet. "Fire!" Lavra ordered. The dark matter weapon reached out across space like an invisible hand. It grabbed the enemy formation and began compressing it. The Keth ships were pulled together by artificial gravity fields that grew stronger every second. There, hulls buckled and crushed. Their crews were pressed into the walls of their own ships. Within minutes, 3,000 enemy vessels had been compressed into a sphere of matter only a few kilometers wide. Then the sphere collapsed into a black hole that would exist for millions of years. "Target destroyed," the weapons officer reported. Laura nodded grimly. She had trained for this moment, but actually using these weapons felt like unleashing forces that should never exist. "Find the next target." Commander Alex Tonson was having a similar experience aboard the UE's Vengeance. His temporal displacement. Weapons were aging enemy ships thousands of years in seconds. He watched through his view screen as a Keth battleship suddenly began to corrode and fall apart. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "the enemy ship's hull is aging at a rate of 1,000 years per second. Their engines are failing, their weapons are breaking down, and their life support systems are collapsing." The Keth crew aboard the target ship was dying of old age in moments. Warriors who had been young and strong were becoming elderly and frail in seconds. Their equipment was rusting and breaking. Their ship was becoming a flying graveyard. "Continue firing," Alex ordered. "Make sure they understand what happens when you threaten humanity." War General Thax was experiencing the effects of temporal weapons firsthand. His own ship was caught in a time field that was aging him and his crew at an accelerated rate. He watched his hands becoming wrinkled and spotted. His officers were growing old before his eyes. "Medical emergency on all decks," came the announcement over the ship's communication system. "All personnel are experiencing rapid aging. Life support systems are failing due to equipment breakdown." Thax tried to send a message to the human fleet, but his communication equipment was too old to function properly. The metal was corroding, the circuits were failing, and the power systems were breaking down. "Please," he whispered into his failing communicator, "we surrender. We yield. Please show mercy." But the human fleet was not listening to surrender offers. They had seen what the Keth Empire did to defenseless colonies. They had witnessed the destruction of New Portland and the attempted genocide of the Zephyrians. Mercy was not an option, Captain. Emma Rodriguez, aboard the UES Defender, was using quantum cascade weapons to erase entire sections of the Keth fleet from existence. Her weapons didn't just destroy enemy ships. They removed them from reality itself. Sir, her weapons officer reported quantum cascade fired. 4,000 enemy vessels eliminated. Emma watched as a massive section of the Keth fleet simply vanished. The ships didn't explode or break apart. They were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never existed at all. The quantum cascade is working perfectly, her science officer reported. We're literally unraveling the atomic structure of enemy vessels. They're being converted back into basic energy. Dr. Wade was monitoring the battle from her laboratory on Europa. The energy readings she was detecting were beyond anything she had imagined when she designed these weapons. The quantum cascade reactions were affecting space-time itself. General Taylor, she said into her communicator, the quantum fields are beginning to affect the local stellar region. We're seeing temporal anomalies within 50 light years of the battle. General Taylor was on Earth, watching the battle through long-range sensors. What kind of anomalies? Time dilation effects, gravitational distortions, and quantum fluctuations, Dr. Wade replied. We're literally changing the structure of space-time. Some areas will remain unstable for centuries. The galaxy's surviving species were watching the battle with growing horror. The Zephyrians, from their hidden monitoring stations, were recording impossible energy readings. The Alterans were detecting space-time distortions at their most advanced. Science couldn't explain. High-Technician Vex Tar sent a message to all remaining Zephyrian forces. The humans are using weapons that manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. They're not just winning this battle. They're reshaping the galaxy itself. Trade Master Quillen of the Alterans was reaching a similar conclusion. All Alteran vessels maintain maximum distance from the battle zone. The humans are using technology that can tear holes in space itself. We're witnessing the birth of a new type of warfare. The small species that had already surrendered to the Keth Empire were beginning to understand what they were really seeing. The humans hadn't been weak during the past 2 centuries. They had been restraining themselves. They had been trying to protect the galaxy from their own capabilities. War General Thax made one final attempt to communicate with the human fleet. His ship was dying around him. His crew was aging to death, and his fleet was being systematically destroyed. Human fleet, he transmitted on all frequencies. This is War General Thax. We surrender unconditionally. We yield to your superior power. Please end this destruction. Admiral Martinez received the message aboard the U-East Titan. She looked around. Her bridge at the officers, who had served with her for years. They were all thinking the same thing. It was too late for surrender. Sir, her communications officer said, we're receiving surrender offers from all remaining Keth ships. They're begging for mercy. Martinez thought about the millions of civilians who had died on New Portland. She thought about the Zephyrian homeworld burning under Keth plasma fire. She thought about the ultimatum that had demanded humanity's unconditional surrender. Continue the attack, she ordered. Make sure there are no survivors to threaten the galaxy again. The battle continued for another hour. By the end, the Keth Empire's fleet of 50,000 ships had been completely destroyed. Not a single vessel escaped. Not a single Keth warrior survived to tell the tale. The quantum cascade weapons had erased 30,000 ships from existence. The dark matter manipulation systems had crushed 15,000 vessels into artificial black holes. The temporal displacement weapons had aged 5,000 ships to death. When it was over, The space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of the most powerful military force in galactic history. But more importantly, it was filled with permanent scars in space-time itself, areas where reality had been damaged by human weapons, regions that would remain dangerous for thousands of years. The galaxy was silent. Every species had watched the battle. Every civilization had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The peaceful, diplomatic humans had revealed themselves to be the most terrifying military force the galaxy had ever seen, and they had used only a small fraction of their true power. The galaxy was forever changed. In the months following what would be called the Last War, every species in known space was forced to confront a new reality. Humanity, the species they had considered weak and peaceful, had demonstrated military power beyond anything they had imagined possible. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood before the new Galactic Assembly on Nexus Prime. The old Galactic Federation had been dissolved after the war. In its place, the surviving species had formed the Concordat of Worlds, a new government based on one simple principle: never again would any species threaten humanity. The first law of the Concordat, Lisa read from the founding document, is that no member species shall take aggressive military action against humanity or its allies. Any violation of this law will result in immediate expulsion from the Concordat and loss of all protection under galactic law. The representatives listened in silence. They had all seen what happened to the Keth Empire. They had all witnessed the complete destruction of 50,000 warships in less than 6 hours. They understood that this law was not just a political agreement. It was a survival requirement. High Technician Vextar of the Zephyrian Collective stood to speak. His people had lost their homeworld to the Keth Empire, but they had been saved by humanity's intervention. The Zephyrian Collective pledges its full support to the Concordat. We also wish to formally thank humanity for ending the Keth threat. Trade Master Quillan of the Alteran Republic nodded in agreement. The Alterans established the human tribute fleet as of today. We will deliver resources and goods to human colonies as payment for their protection of galactic peace. Lisa felt uncomfortable with the praise. Humanity didn't want this war, she said. We spent centuries trying to prevent it. We developed those weapons as a last resort, hoping we would never need to use them. But the galaxy's reaction was not about what humanity had wanted. It was about what they had done. The complete annihilation of the Keth Empire had sent a message that every species understood. Humanity was not to be threatened. Dr. Helen Wade was testifying before the Galactic Ethics Committee about Project Omega. The committee had been formed to investigate the weapons humanity had used and to ensure they would never be used again. Dr. Wade asked the committee chairman, "Can you explain the long-term effects of the quantum cascade weapons?" Helen looked at her notes. The weapons created permanent tears in space-time. Several star systems within 50 light-years of the battle zone are experiencing temporal anomalies. Time moves differently in those regions. Some areas are aging faster than normal, others slower. And the dark matter manipulation systems? They created artificial black holes that will exist for millions of years. The gravitational effects are changing the orbital patterns of nearby star systems. 3 planets have already been pulled out of their normal orbits. The committee members looked horrified. Dr. Wade, did humanity consider these consequences before using the weapons? Helen met their gaze steadily. We considered them very carefully. We knew the weapons would cause permanent damage to space-time itself. But we also knew that if we didn't use them, the Keth Empire would enslave or destroy every free species in the galaxy. The committee's final report concluded that humanity's use of the weapons had been justified by the extreme circumstances. But it also recommended that such weapons never be used again. President Adams announced the decommissioning of all quantum cascade weapons in a speech to the Global Defense Council. These weapons served their purpose, he said. They ended the threat to galactic peace. But they are too dangerous to keep active. We will destroy them and hope that future generations never need to build them again. But everyone knew that the knowledge still existed. The scientists who had built the weapons were still alive. The research data was still stored in secure facilities. If humanity ever needed to defend itself again, they could rebuild the weapons. The galaxy's response to this knowledge was to ensure that humanity would never feel threatened again. The Zephyrian Collective dedicated their entire civilization to studying the space-time damage caused by human weapons. They wanted to understand how reality itself could be weaponized. Science director Morthake published a report that shocked the galaxy. The damage to space-time will take millennia to heal. Several star systems will remain uninhabitable for thousands of years. The humans have left permanent scars on the galaxy itself. But rather than condemning humanity, the galaxy's reaction was to be even more careful around them. The scars in space-time served as permanent reminders of what happened when humanity was pushed too far. Admiral Martinez was promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. She oversaw the construction of new human ships designed purely for exploration and defense. The galaxy watched these developments carefully, noting that humanity was building vessels for peace, not conquest. Our new ships will explore the galaxy and help other species, Martinez announced at a press conference. We have no interest in building an empire. We only want to ensure that wars like the one we just fought never happen again. Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral himself, was given command of the new exploration fleet. His ships would visit every system in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Their mission was to prevent conflicts before they could grow into wars. We learned something important during the war, Jake said to his crew. Peace is not maintained by the absence of power. It's maintained by the wisdom to use power only when absolutely necessary. The smaller species that had once been threatened by the Keth Empire began to prosper under the new galactic order. Without the fear of invasion, they could focus on trade, science, and cultural development. Many of them established permanent embassies on human worlds, seeking to maintain close relationships with their protectors. Captain Emma Rodriguez was assigned to patrol the former Keth Empire territories. These star systems had been abandoned. After the war, their populations either destroyed or scattered. Emma's job was to ensure that no new aggressive species tried to claim these worlds. It's strange, Emma reported to Admiral Martinez. These systems are completely empty now. Entire civilizations just gone. It makes you wonder if we did the right thing. Martinez understood her feelings. We did what we had to do, Emma. The Keth Empire chose to threaten the entire galaxy. We chose to stop them. The responsibility for what happened lies with them, not us. But the weight of what humanity had done affected everyone who had participated in the war. The complete destruction of an entire species was not something to celebrate, even when it had been necessary. Dr. Wade continued her research, but now she focused on healing rather than destruction. She led projects to repair some of the space-time damage caused by the quantum cascade weapons. It was slow work that would take centuries, but she was determined to fix what could be fixed. We broke parts of the galaxy, she said in an interview. Now we have a responsibility to repair what we can. Future generations should not have to live with the scars we created. The Keth homeworld remained uninhabitable. The quantum cascade weapons had made the entire planet toxic to life. It would remain that way for thousands of years, a monument to the price of aggression. 50 years after the war, the galaxy enjoyed unprecedented peace and prosperity. No species had raised a military fleet above defensive levels. No government had threatened its neighbors. The mere mention of humanity in military contexts was enough to end any dispute. Children of various species learned about the last war in school. The lesson was always the same: peace was precious, and those who threatened it would face consequences beyond imagination. Teachers showed them images of the space-time scars that still marked the galaxy, permanent reminders of humanity's power. Captain Ryan Brooks, now an old man, served as Earth's ambassador to the Concordat. He often spoke about the war to young diplomats from various species. The humans tried for 2 centuries to prevent that war, he would tell them. They offered diplomatic solutions, peace treaties, and compromise. But sometimes evil forces you to fight. When that happens, you must be prepared to use whatever power is necessary to protect the innocent. Trade Master Quillen's successor continued the human tribute fleet tradition. Alterran ships brought gifts to human colonies every year, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. The humans had saved the galaxy from tyranny, and the Alterrans never forgot that. The Zephyrians rebuilt their civilization around the study of temporal mechanics and quantum physics. They wanted to understand the weapons humanity had used, not to copy them, but to comprehend how reality itself could be manipulated. Their research led to breakthroughs in space travel and communication data in the depths of space. Automated human monitoring stations kept watch over the galaxy. These stations were equipped with sensors that could detect military buildups, aggressive movements, and potential threats. The message they broadcast was simple but effective. We are still here. We remember. We are still watching. No species tested humanity's resolve. The lesson of the last war was too clear, too devastating to ignore. The galaxy had learned that there were some lines that should never be crossed. Admiral Jake Morrison, now in his 70s, often stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was peaceful. Trade flowed freely.